On Reanimator, Tony Dublin and I co-supervised special effects and special effects makeup. And so we went ahead and built the stuff and got down to the point that Stuart, as we were going through, just wanted more and more and more, and never really pointed out, except to a couple of us at certain points with certain things, that he was going after kind of a almost theater the absurdist type humor with some of it.
We did all the special effects, makeup effects, the head cutting off of Dr. Hill, all the glowing. In those days, there wasn't any LEDs or anything like that, so we were using those glow sticks for the glowing reanimating juice, and we went through 900 of those sticks because they wouldn't sell that material to us in bulk.
Now, I'd never really done a horror film before, so I'm an ex-EMT. I had seen the real stuff, duplicated some of it for some paramedic training projects I had done when I was very young. But so a couple of them in between, and then the next time around was in essence what I consider to be the real sequel to Reanimator, which is From Beyond, because that's the only one that really involved everybody.
They had a deal with Charlie Band at Empire Pictures to do another show, From Beyond, so they wanted to bring John Nolan and I back in to work on From Beyond.
I love working with Stuart. Stuart is tremendously creative. He believes in pre-production, but where Stuart, because he's got a background in live theater, and where he absolutely shines is once he sees everybody in makeup and costume, once he sees the gags, once he sees it there, he always gets at least 10% more creative. I just had to learn that you have to budget 10%. You have to allow 10% when you're working with Stuart, because it's going to happen whether you do or not, and you need to be able to offer the same level of excellence. They also had chosen a series of companies to work on the effects because there were so many of them, and they also kind of Stuart and Brian kind of like to have different to take different styles and throw them into the mix.
I got involved with Stuart Gordon's From Beyond by working at John Beekler's MMI effect shop. From Beyond was a pretty big job. There were 3 different effect shops working on it: Mark Shostrom's studio, John Nolan, and John Beekler's studio. So I was involved in sculpting some of the intermediate transformation stages and different forms of the Pretorius monster. It goes through a bunch of different manifestations, and there were many different scales of it. And all the work was prepped in Los Angeles, and then different crews flew over to Rome to shoot it. I worked in this studio, and we worked for about 3 months prepping, and at the same time, I was supervising another Stuart film called The Dolls. Stuart is one of those rare souls who is a complete visionary, but he's excellent in his soft-spokenness, that he's really literate and gentle to get across sometimes some heavy-handed, violent ideas. It's a great dichotomy in a sense.
Delicious.
They can make you very sick.
I was the supervisor, so basically did the breakdown into the Jeffrey Combs effects, pineal effects, the Pretorius effects, the creature effects, primarily the little swimming creatures and the lamprey eels and that sort of stuff, which I also took. So those were done by myself and my crew.
It was a real interesting talent pool, that kind of, a petri dish of talent that then exploded out in different directions.
And of course, it's going to be done now in Italy, so we had to make everything so that it was transportable. Now, the slime was a big thing. The slime is methyl cellulose, basically the same as the Ghostbusters slime. It's a food thickening agent, and it comes in a powder, but it also comes pre-made in various different thicknesses. And you can make this stuff by mixing it properly, anything from a real light, very, almost blow your nose slime, all the way to pieces that are castable. And so we did that. We were playing around with it a lot. And I realized that to ship literally the drums of this stuff that we were going to have to ship to Italy was going to be ridiculously expensive. So what I did was we bought a couple of 30-pound drums of just the dry powder, shipped those to Italy, and then had it set up over there where we had propane burners and great big pasta pots. I figured, hey, I'm in Italy, I got to be able to get some big pasta pots and some big wood paddle type stirrers. And I'd worked in an Italian restaurant, I knew they had those, so I figured we could make our own.
John Nolan and John Criswell were in charge of doing like the pineal gland effects, the head, you know, and unfortunately Jeff wouldn't let him shave his head. So that's why some of that got a little bulkier than it really should have been, because he had a full head of hair under there.
And the pineal gland that we made for Jeffrey Combs was machined by an aerospace machinist that I had do the work. It was all ball and socket joints with cables, and it would actually cross around and back over itself. It was so flexible, and it would fit inside of a number 2 pencil. I mean, they were tiny, tiny different parts, and there were about 60 of them. You could also string them in longer and shorter, so that we, you know, had some sequences where it only was popping out about this much and looking around. And we had put a whole track system together on his head, so that we could just plug in various different versions of it and string the cables. It went down his back to a box, and then that, you know, we picked up a converter off of that to the controllers.
Mark Sjostrom was in charge of Pretorius effects, the big Pretorius monster, the appliances that went on Pretorius, the actor's face, Ted Sorrell. So he was in charge of all that, the props that went along with it, like some of the tentacles and the hands and weird stuff that went with that particular creature.
Then when they got into some of the transformational stuff from while still on the actor was done by Beekler. The ones where it looks like everything's just kind of twirling around. Those were actually air. Those were little tubes with air. So that was blowing around, just kind of the water wiggle effect. It was the big, what we called the shrimp creature, or the flying shrimp creature, the big giant creature that is seen in a couple of places. You see it kind of flying, and that's a miniature one, and that was done by Beekler's guys, and it's a rod puppet. And then there was this big giant version, and that's the one that twists off Jeffrey's head. And when they first got to Italy, now this is Beekler got to Italy and his people, and they're unwrapping this thing. And I'll have to tell you, just coming out of the box, that thing was magnificent. It really was. It really looked fabulous. Right at the same time, we were shooting the initial little eel type creature, the one that comes right, comes kind of, you see them all going up around the lights, and then it comes right at the camera, and you see it biting, and it takes a little chunk out of Jeffrey Combs' cheek. Now, that particular one was designed to be seen inside out. So it was not very cool looking. As a matter of fact, it was covered on the outside with overlaid versions of condoms. Basically, it had condoms that had been slit open and turned into flat panels, and they were just glued over, because you could see the heart beating on the inside and everything like that. And Mac Allberg backlit it so you could see through it, and with the slime on it and the thing going, it looked really good.
Stuart wanted to try to do it as much practical as possible because of his stage background. And at one time I even had thought about maybe doing the eels stop motion, and I actually built a test eel with a bit of an armature in it so I could, just give it a try. And it was just too laborious, to get a nice smooth, tail type thing, and it would have I'd still be working on it. When we had like the jellyfish floating and the moray, the eels coming in and swimming in that, right off the bat, pretty much figured that we're going to have to do in an aquarium, to get that kind of a floaty look. There was no CG or anything like that, and I'm kind of a student of kind of film history, kind of also how other people do things, and only 5 years earlier, Poltergeist had come out, and there was that one creature, a ghost that blocks the doorway when she's trying to run through the hallway, and it's real floaty and that. Well, that was done in an aquarium. So I was like, okay, I gotta have floaty things, we'll shoot it in an aquarium. One of the things that was kind of funny, I guess, was the insect storm. they wanted, you know, all these bugs to attack, and then they're carnivorous, so they actually eat up the bodies, and it actually eats up Ken Foree, so the only thing that's left is his head and his skeleton. Well, those were styrofoam beads, okay, and so it's like, you know, damp and cold in our shop, and we got these. They want to ship them over from this country, so we found a supplier in Italy. We got all these beads. We had to paint them gray because styrofoam only comes in white, so we actually had to paint them. And so we had to set up a room with like this big screen box, and we had a couple of Italian laborers that would rake them and spray them, and we had these jet engine heaters underneath to warm them up so they could get. Brian comes in, he goes, looks at him doing it, and he goes, well, what's next? You guys gonna paint faces on all of them?
I have to tell you, Italy and the way they make movies over there are very different than here. Their unions are not set up in such a way that they try to push into double time or triple time or things like that. In fact, they make it so expensive for you to go over so much as a half hour a day that it was cheaper for us to shoot an entire extra week than it was to push by half hour, an hour a day. Also, they got into the World Cup for soccer, and the whole country shut down. We had to, you know, I mean, they shut down entirely, and we had to stop.
They had certain people that would work with the Anglos, you know, and we didn't have any problems, you know. A lot of them didn't speak English, and the only Italian I knew at that time would have got me beat up. You know, so. But, you know, we had everybody, you know, there's a common language. Oh, a tripod, or can you do, you know, and you point and you gesture and you work it out, you know, and it worked out real well.
It was great, you know, up until my accident, and I had to come over and just double check with some timing and stuff on set. I came back in through one of the big stage doors, but it was a side door. It wasn't like a big elephant door. It was the you know, big side door. But even then, they're about that thick. And over here, because of OSHA and safety and all that sort of stuff, they would have a crash bar on one side, and they just automatically have a latch type setup. Well, over there, this thing is this wide. It weighs about 700 pounds, and it's got two big eye bolts, just big eye rings, you know, that are one's welded to the door, one's welded to the door frame, and they cross over this way. And then they took a third bolt that was on a piece of grip chain that was welded to a piece of grip chain, dropped it down through the center, and that was the lock for the door. All right, so I came through this door. Just at that moment, the red light came on. They're going to start to shoot. I reach back thinking I'm grabbing a crash bar, and I put my fingers into one of those two holes, and I pull it closed. Right at that point, somebody on the outside also sees the red lights on and kicks the door to get it closed quickly, and it closed scissored across my hand. And these two fingers, I'd reach back and grab with these two fingers, and they were sheared off. Actually, they were broken. It sounded like somebody had taken about 5 pencils and just gone, and it actually hit the nerve bundle, so it didn't really hurt at that moment. And it sure did later, but not at that moment. And I did what you instinctively would do. I pulled on it, and that yanked them off. And one finger was laying across. This finger was laying this way. And this finger had been stripped off from here to the end and was laying down here, and this bone was sticking out like a chicken bone that was broken, like in the shape of a Y. And I took one look at that, and it started to bleed, of course, and I was like, uh-oh. From the dark, it looked like all I could see was this finger and a little stump on this finger, you know, and I was like, uh-oh. And I go running out to what they call work lights in Italy, which is a big stand, a big straight stand, with what looks like a Thomas Edison light bulb on the top of it with a cage around it, you know, light bulb this big. And I hold it up, and that's, again, I don't see anything. All I see is nothing here and a little piece of bone here. But then I saw, as my eyes kind of adjusted to light, I saw my finger laying here, and I turned it around. I saw the other one laying by just a little bit of ligature down here. And of course, you know, I think this is the only take I've ever ruined in my entire career. But I mean, I screamed. I was like, And I made up all kinds of fun new words, and I'm like, oh my God! And I put my arm up, and I put my finger, because I'm an ex-EMT, I put it into the pressure point up here to stop the bleeding. And Stuart comes around the corner like, who the heck is making all this noise? Takes one look at this and goes and passes out at my feet. So now everybody comes around, and it looks like I'm standing here like this, and everybody thought I'd hit Stuart or knocked him out or whatever, and they're like, what the heck? And so they're all gathering around Stuart, and I'm going, excuse me, but could somebody actually take the person who was really hurt here to a hospital? Both Stuart and I were taken to the same hospital, and it was not a hospital. It was well, I guess it was a hospital, but it was like out of the 1930s. And it was just row after row after row of these old metal beds with people laying in them moaning. This one, of course, was at the first place. They just kind of took it and picked it up and jammed it back on the bone and put the bone together and just wrapped my hand all up. And it's like, okay, we're gonna take you out. And meanwhile, they had been looking for one of these beds for me. And we walked through this barracksy type thing with the only nurse that they had that spoke English. Her name was Maria. And we're walking out through there, and there was a guy laying in his bed, and he already had lividity, the blood sinking down that forces all the bottom to make big purple bruising, which we had studied on Reanimator, and I had to duplicate on Reanimator for all the corpses. And I said, that guy's dead. She goes, no, he's sleeping. And I actually found Stuart, and we were talking, and they go, oh, we've got a bed for you. And Stuart walks along with us, and we walk back in, and here's this same bed. It's still got the outline of this person's body in it. It's still the same sheets. And they want me to get into this bed. And I'm like, there's no way I'm getting into that bed. I don't know how many hours that guy laid in that bed, and I don't know what he died from, but I'm not getting in that bed with the same damn sheets. That is not going to happen. So I turned to Stuart and I said, Stuart, they won't let me leave. Do anything you can. And he pulled 100,000 lira out of his pocket, which back in those days was about $90. And suddenly the rules changed and I could leave. So I was back at work the next day. And 3 days later, I went back over there with Tony's wife, and she was driving me. And we got there, and Maria was there, and they unwrapped my finger and my hand, and the end of this finger went and fell back off again, and it did not smell good either. And the doctor's going like this, like, I'm going to cut off your fingers, and I'm going, no, I do film insert stuff. I mean, all those close-up surgery and Reanimator, that was me. I'd done a lot of stuff already on the close-up stuff on From Beyond on camera as well. No, you're not cutting my hands off. You're not cutting my fingers off. I'm a sculptor. You cannot cut my fingers off. And so the doctor walked away for a minute with the intention of taking these two fingers off. And I grabbed the file, and I slipped a couple bucks to a couple lira, whatever, to Maria, and Tony's ex-wife and I barreled out of the fire escape. And about 45 minutes later, I was on my way to Rome to Salvator Mundi, which is the Vatican hospital, and the Pope's standby surgical team spent 5.5 hours rebuilding my hand, and it works, every bit of it.
Chase.
Well, it's a wild film. I mean, I think it's great. I think it's actually one of the best personifications of the very bizarre things that went on inside of Lovecraft's mind. I mean, Lovecraft was in an era where they had just discovered bacteria, and the whole concept that something that was invisible could come out and get you and kill you, and that's what all these millions of people had died from in the Black Plague and all these other diseases, and that just absolutely not only creatively impassioned him, but it also made him quite paranoid. In reality, I mean, he was very, very paranoid about this stuff. So I just think that this shows that very well, and with a little fun. I mean, just enough tongue-in-cheek to have a little fun with it.
Another life, I would have enjoyed you in another way.